Let's get ready to rumble!
I was listening to Gareth A. Davis, and, you know, you can say, well, Beats, if you got such a low opinion of him, why are you listening? Well, here's what it is. Take the good, disseminate that from the bad, and we move on. He said that one of the stumbling blocks could be that Eubank obviously wants to be compensated for having to cut so much weight. He's never weighed in 156 ever for a fight as a professional. And against that, Benn's people will be negotiating a clause that every pound he comes in over 156, he could be fined up to 100 grand per pound. Well, if he's getting a multi-million-dollar purse, Eubank, he might give up 200 grand. Will Benn still take the fight? Why would Eubank do that? Well, Danny Jacobs, he missed the same day check weighing against Golovkin, didn't he? He couldn't fight for the IBF title, but the fight still went ahead. And he gave Golovkin a good fight. It didn't ultimately pay off because he didn't get the W. Against Canelo, he skipped the same day rehydration clause that Canelo put in Jacobs' contract. And Eddie Hearn paid whatever excess he had to pay for coming in overweight. And it didn't pay off there, but at least he went in the ring on his own terms and wasn't unnecessarily drained. Like Kevin Mitchell, he missed the same day check weighing against this unbeaten African-Canadian fighter, and he was pretty good. It was an IBF eliminator at 135, and Kevin beat him up. He came off the canvas and beat him up. Now, Kevin didn't get a title shot because he missed the check weighing, but I never heard of the Canadian guy again. Never heard of him again. One fight later, Kevin got a title shot for the WBA because it's all about momentum. If you win, you keep the momentum going. If you lose, comprehensively, you got to start from scratch again. So Eubank, will he be tempted to play around with a couple of pounds? But that's why Gareth Davis is suggesting that it could be 100 grand a pound he has to pay. And that's a lot of bread to break off your opponent before you've even thrown a punch. But at least Eubank will be giving himself a fighting chance if he does something like that. One thing they haven't spoke about is a rehydration clause. Is there only so much that Eubank can rehydrate to? Maybe that could be an issue for Eubank. But if there is no rehydration clause, it could be a disaster for Benn. It could be. Because Eubank is no bigger than a lot of the super welterweights currently plying their trade in the game. He's no bigger than Jamel Charlo, or even Jamal, who used to campaign at 154. He doesn't look bigger than Andrade, who used to campaign there. Tony Harrison. Plus, Eubank ain't a guy who blows up in between fights. He doesn't appear to be that guy who's eating donuts and having one beer too many, if any. Eubank could be the wrong person to take a catchweight fight against. You know, like in a rematch Sugar Ray Leonard had with Roberto Duran. Duran won the first one on points, big upset. Ray Leonard had a rematch clause. Yes, they were back there then for A-side fighters, yes. And nothing new under the sun. And because Duran had a reputation of blowing up between fights, they called in the clause early. And these are huge purses that Duran is making. Duran couldn't make that kind of money against no other fighter in the game. Multi-million-dollar purses. Early 80s. Got to take it. Or Leonard will go elsewhere. Ray Leonard's team knew that Duran was living the good life. Probably wasn't in training or anything like that. So they exercised the rematch clause. And Duran had to get himself prepared prematurely than he was expecting to. And yeah, Leonard got the victory. But Eubank isn't as wild as Duran. He's more disciplined in between fights. You never see Eubank with a belly or anything. You'd see Duran with a belly and shit like that in between fights. Why is Conor taking this fight? Well, I read somewhere Conor said that he walks around sometimes at 160. But walking around at 160 is different to being a 160-pound fighter. We need to establish that. Is Conor going to come in at 156? Or is he going to try and retain some of his welterweight speed? Maybe come in at 154? Does Conor really want to bulk up like that? Coming in at an unnatural fighting weight, not walking around weight, fighting weight, could have adverse effects on his performance. It could. Like I'm reading here in the Ring magazine, if there isn't no rehydration clause, Eubank could conceivably come in as high as 170, they're saying here. But more weight isn't always good weight. A lot of times that heavy rehydration that some fighters do makes them sluggish and slow. A lot of people are making a big deal that this is a disgrace to boxing. You've got a welterweight taking on a middleweight. Back in the day, when there was 8 weight classes, people jumped up all the time with no catch weight. Jump all the way from 147 to 160. And a lot of times they took these fights short notice. Benn's getting a whole camp. He's got a catch weight clause. Obviously, Tony Sims has seen him fight bigger fighters in the gym. Well, they wouldn't be doing it. We need to establish that. I saw Marlon Starling jump up to 160 and challenge Michael Nunn for the IBF title. I think that was Marlon's last fight. And gave him a very technical fight. Went the limit. Emil Griffiths, a welterweight. He won the middleweight title. Let's remember, Eubank hasn't won a full world title at 160 or 168 yet. He hasn't really proved himself to be top elite. Definitely world class. Now, if Conor was going up to challenge a 160-pound Canelo, it could be a bit dicey. I guarantee you, unless Eubank lands something really hard and knocks Ben out in a couple of minutes, you would have seen Eubank in more one-sided fights than this. Against middleweights and super middleweights. Conor will be better prepared than a lot of Eubank's previous opponents. But look, sometimes it can go wrong, challenging a bigger man. Jose Napoles, great welterweight champion, he tried to jump up to 160 to challenge the middleweight champ Carlos Monzon, and it was a horrible night for Jose. So it could go totally wrong, of course it could. You know, the margins in boxing are a bitch. Like, if Conor comes out strategically wrong against a 147-pounder, let's say not an elite 147-pounder, right? He might make some mistakes, get caught with shots he shouldn't get caught with. But if he were to make them same mistakes against a 160-pounder or a 156-pounder, might be an early shower. Well, this answers a lot of my speculations. Tony Sims has said if Eubank weighs in over 1.58, 5 ounces, the fight's off. Some people are going to say, if Conor is this badass, why are you so scared about Eubank coming in at 159, 160? Eubank, is he cashing out? Yeah, to a degree. The WBO, they've got Andrade still hanging on to his 160 belt there. Hanging on a string, literally. He won't fight Johnny Beck. And Eubank is not going to fight Andrade. Andrade called him out just the other week, didn't he? Andrade called out Eubank, even though he's got to take on Johnny Beck to keep that WBO strap. Johnny Beck has the lower tier belt to Andrade. And, you know, risk reward, Eubank is not fighting Johnny Beck. The fight doesn't generate money. The networks who are backing Eubank on Sky, they're not going to go for it. Risk reward doesn't generate money. They have no options on Johnny Beck. They're not going to go for it. I don't think the Jaime Munguia fight is there for him. I don't think that's there. Morales and Golden Boy, they don't seem in no hurry to rush Jaime into taking on anybody with a pulse. Jaime is ranked #1 by the WBO. I've never heard of Esquivel Falcao. It's not a big fight for Eubank. He's #1 ranked for Golovkin's IBF title. Golovkin is tied up with his Canelo fight. That's not there for Eubank right now. He does want to fight Golovkin. Obviously, you've got the WBA and their interim champions that they said that we're going to get rid of. Now, Erislandy Lara holds a lower tier belt to Golovkin's WBA belt. And Wasserman and Eubank, as old as Erislandy Lara is, they're not going to go up against that southpaw stance and them long straight punches from Lara. Although Lara stands in the pocket a lot more, they're not going to go for that fight there. The risk reward doesn't pan out as far as they're concerned. Like I said, Golovkin's tied up with the WBA and WBO straps. He's moving up to 168 to fight Canelo. Then there's Jamal Charlo. Well, Eubank was on the PBC with Jamal Charlo for how long? That fight didn't happen there. So Sky basically want to fight to blow Eubank's name up. Yeah? Trust me, he's not going to be taking on any more welterweights if he beats Benn. They want to blow him up with his pay-per-view and hopefully attract the names over to the Sky platform in big pay-per-view events where both Eubank and his opponents are compensated well in big shows. And it's the same with DAZN. They want to blow Ben up. If Ben can pull this off, if either man wins, they become huge stars overnight. You know, like, I think Ring IQ, he said it pretty well. Ben did try to get the likes of Broner in the ring, which would have been a good fight for him at this stage here. A Keith Thurman would be a good fight for him, but he hasn't been able to get them guys in the ring. They're not going to fight Boots Ennis. It's too dangerous. And it's hard to negotiate with Showtime and the PBC as well right now. For whatever reasons, it just is. Virgil Ortiz, he just fought Michael Mickinson. That could happen. That's a possibility. But it's risky, isn't it? It's very risky. They're just trying to get in between risky and winnable. Maybe some of the logic is if Benn loses to Eubank, who is a middleweight / super middleweight, it's not that big a deal unless he's really annihilated badly. He should be able to drop back down to 147 and carry on and continue his apprenticeship at that weight and eventually get himself into contention for a title shot. Connor's still only 25. He's 21-0 with 14 knockouts. Eubank, though, at 32, if he loses to a welterweight, just for his own ego, forget what the rest of us have to say, for his own ego and his own fighting pride, he'll be evaluating where he goes from here. It's not necessarily over for him, but he's the one who has more to lose. Let's hope the British boxing promoters keep this going. We've got Frank Warren working with Ben Shalom, Parker versus Joyce. We've got Eddie and the Wasserman people working together with Eubank and Benn. And the reason this is happening, and I was hoping it would, because I was hoping the promoters wouldn't be stupid out here. They know their bottom end in the UK is all in our domestic market. The domestic boxing scene here is like a national treasure. Now, Cali and New Southland, I think they're a little way off doing pay-per-view on Channel 5. But you have the likes of DAZN, Canelo Triple G, Benn versus Eubank, Sky, KSI, Usyk versus Joshua, Catterall versus Taylor, that's going to be pay-per-view. Frank Warren, I think Joyce versus Parker, that's going to be pay-per-view. Not everybody's going to do numbers. And it's a tiny little island. If they flood the market with pay-per-views, especially a lot of domestic pay-per-views and even international pay-per-views, are people really going to go for it and pay for all of that? Should Benn and Eubank be on pay-per-view? Neither of them have won a world title yet. The IBO don't count unless you've got other legit belts with it. That's what Chris Eubank hasn't been told. Is there a certain demographic of boxing fans? And I spoke offline to somebody about it who just adamantly disagreed with what I had to say about DAZN's U-turn on pay-per-view. He thinks it's outrageous. And I was listening. Are there a demographic of boxing fans who are never going to forgive them for that and cancel their subscriptions, and they're not going to go back to it because they feel cheated? And are we going to get to a state where DAZN, BT, Sky are just putting on pay-per-view, competing to see who could do the most pay-per-view, get the most numbers, and they might find out that there is a big demographic of British boxing fans who love domestic boxing, and they will pay a subscription to get it. But if you're just going to keep bringing it to the pay-per-view platform, they might vote with their pockets and say we're out. Eubank versus Benn, October the 8th. O2 Arena, the venue. Both men will need to come in at a catch weight. Although it's not confirmed, this rumoured a weight of 156 has been agreed. Broadcaster. The fight will be streamed live on DAZN pay-per-view, but price details have not yet been announced. DAZN is currently £7.99 a month for a subscription. See, this is what I was saying. When this fight was talked about early, I said I don't mind it if they get it signed and into action and then they get on with their careers. But if it drags on, that it might happen and might not happen, it's not a good thing. It's not a good thing. And the thing with dragging these negotiations out, look how long we waited for Manny Pacquiao versus Floyd Mayweather. And when it was signed and I made my breakdown, you know how much subs I lost because of my breakdown and prediction? I said that Floyd's going to school him. It's going to be a sparring session. And that's what it was, really. Manny had a couple of moments. But the anticlimactic ending to the fight, after waiting all that time, is something that anyone who is trying to make Spence and Crawford has to think about. What if one man schools the other easy, or, it's just like a boring fight after all this wait and talk back and forth, both fan bases saying this and that about Spence and Crawford and the fighters themselves saying what they're going to do, and then it's an anticlimactic ending. It's just a boxing match, yeah? It's just a boxing match. Spence and Crawford are ready to fight, but are the promoters over there ready to promote? Let's see some promotion. But they spent a lot of time talking the fight down, piracy issues. They're going to steal the fight. Crawford can't sell. Now they have to reverse the whole mindset and tell people it is a huge fight. Let's see some promotion. Dan Raphael, he seems to have some intel that Crawford and Spence could be on for November. A Spence fan said, Spence better not be giving Crawford any 50-50, and Dan got mad and said, why the fuck do you care? It's not your money. And that's the point we're at right now. If you want to talk Spence out of taking the fight, it's not a good look. Crawford is not going to listen to all the, he needs to take the lower end of the purse. He's not necessarily going to listen. Maybe he might, but the Spence fan base or the Spence friendly media are not going to coerce Crawford to do something he doesn't want to do. I've heard Blood Boxing make similar arguments, and I agree. I agree with him. Bo Mack is insistent that they take 50-50. And he's not just a trainer, apparently. He manages Bud. He says that Crawford has something that Spence wants. Just like Caleb Plant had something that Canelo wanted, and it cost $10 million to get that. But when you look at Bud's purses, what did he get? I think he got $6 million for the Porter fight. $6 million, if that's a correct source. Porter got about $4 million. They had to pay a lot to get Porter over there. But when Porter fought Spence, their guarantees were $2 million with whatever upside there was on the pay-per-view. If you're not going to A-side Porter, how are you going to A-side Crawford, is my question to Spence. The other question, not question, but observation is, if Spence was paying his opponents what Joshua and Canelo paid their opponents, Crawford wouldn't or couldn't ask for 50-50. It's as simple as that. There'd be no need to ask for anything. He'd be getting a purse that exceeds anything he's earned. Well, let's see if they can get it done. Let's see if Dan has got a legitimate source and they finally get this fight on. I wonder if Otto Wallin understands that he lost to Tyson Fury. There wasn't no confusion about who won the fight. You exceeded your expectations and nothing more. Like, he's putting his name in the hat to fight Tyson Fury again. And he said, I deserve it with my performance in the first fight. No, you don't. It wasn't controversial. Tyson Fury won the fight. The truth is, Otto Wallin doesn't have no standout victories over top 10 opponents. He doesn't. And even against journeymen like Sokolowski, he hasn't looked good. Against Travis Kaufman, didn't look good. And actually, a fight between Otto Wallin and Derek Chisora would be a little interesting. That would be a little interesting. What does Otto Wallin really have going for him right now? He has that Tyson Fury fight, and people are saying, well, he nearly stopped Fury on cuts. He did. And he gave him a few, let's say, concerning moments. Maybe there might be some untapped potential there. But when we're seeing him against journeyman, literally, he's not performing. He's winning, but he's not performing. He's not shining. You need to shine. You need to shine. Look, don't get it confused. Otto Wallin is a quality boxer. And although he's not a big puncher, and he doesn't shine even against non-ranked opposition, didn't come close to even buzzing Dominic Brazil, from what I remember. He is a quality boxer. And I wouldn't be surprised if he did beat few guys in the top 10. Wouldn't shock me at all. But he hasn't done so as yet. And it seems like he's still living in 2019. In fairness, outside of the Tyson Fury fight, he hasn't had the opportunity to take on any legit top 10 opposition. The Dillian White fight fell through because Dillian's lottery numbers came up and his mandatory came up to fight Fury. And I try and be fair on that. If fighters ain't getting the opportunity to prove themselves against the top-notch opposition, it's hard just to bury them and say, oh, you can't do this and you're no good, if they're not getting the opportunity. Now, Frank Warren is saying Tyson Fury has the itch again. But he has the itch for what? To fight Derek Chisora, who he's beaten twice already, and the second fight was really one-sided, wasn't it? Nobody wants to see this. This is a fight that Tyson Fury's ran twice already, from 2012. And now you want to do the trilogy in 2022? Fury taking fights that the British public are not demanding anyway. You can't take it to America. Saudis ain't going to be interested. I ain't buying it. But I'm not denying Derek a payday. If Derek can go over there and get some money. Even Gareth Davis, Tyson Fury's biggest cheerleader, was objecting to the Fury-Chisora fight. He's saying Tyson Fury should be looking at the winner of Usyk versus Joshua. But I don't know. I think Tyson Fury just trolls and we all fall for it. I don't think he's going to fight Derek Chisora. I don't think the fight's going to happen. And the whole thing about Isaac Lowe training him in Sugar Hill is gone. Sounds like trolling. Sounds like trolling. But although he contradicts himself nearly every bar he spits, he's not a stupid guy. Now, a little while back, he said he's going to have another Derek Chisora fight. He always said he's going to give Derek a third fight. He did. But why now? We always felt that it would probably be after he's tied up all his major fights. Maybe go undisputed, fight Joshua, etc., etc., and Usyk, perhaps. Hopefully not Usyk. But he does have one fight left on his top rank contract. So is this Derek Chisora fight a way of, okay, Bob, thank you very much. I'm going to go on and fight the winner of Usyk versus Joshua. Multi-million-dollar fight. We don't need you no more. Because Bob is saying he's joking when he's talking about the Derek Chisora fight. Bob has wrote the fight off. But it might make sense to Tyson Fury to take that fight. Wilder, he returns after a year out the ring. He takes on Robert Helenius on Fox, October, pay-per-view. Now they're debating up and down social media whether this is pay-per-view worthy. I'll keep it real. Until the numbers are disclosed, we can't really know if this is pay-per-view worthy. We really can't know. I know everyone is speculating right now, but Wilder has come off an excellent fight with Tyson Fury, a losing fight, and he hasn't won since 2019. But his popularity has probably never been higher than what it is right now. Is there going to be a curiosity where people want to see the bronze bomber? See if he's got anything left in the tank? See if he can put the Fury defeats behind him? Now, I've heard it's pay-per-view, but how much is the pricing? Is it going to be an $80 pay-per-view, $70, $50? I don't know. I don't think a lot of the pay-per-views are worth $50. Personally, I'm comparing that to the prices we pay. It's covering the purses, I guess, like how much money is Wilder expecting at this stage of his career? He is the biggest draw the PBC have. Not Tank, not Errol. Wilder is the biggest draw. So I'm assuming Helenius' attempt to go in front of Daniel Dubois and get a title shot before him, I'm assuming that's went up in smoke. Because if that was still a contestable debate, he wouldn't be taking on Wilder because they'd be risking everything. But him and Wilder have been inactive. They both need the rounds, like Wilder doesn't need the money, but I'm sure Helenius could do it a few extra in his pocket to feed his family. Pay-per-view, you wouldn't have thought so, but it's going to be a test of how popular Wilder is. Let's see how much interest his comeback can garner. News in brief, the WBA have ruled in Golden Boy's favour, and ZURDO will get to challenge BIVOL for the WBA title. So Joshua Buatsi looks like he'll be taking on Jean Pascal in a final eliminator for the IBF title that Artur Beterbiev currently occupies with the other two straps he has. Zach Parker tweeted at John Ryder, I've been told you don't want to fight me for the WBO #1 spot. Can't understand why. Winner gets to fight for the world title next. Let's give the British boxing fans a big fight, mate. John Ryder and Billy Joe Saunders was supposed to have a rematch. That's fizzled out, and Billy's time with Matchroom has fizzled out. Like, they tried to make the John Ryder fight, and obviously it fell through. And Eddie and Billy have parted. Somebody suggested that Zach Parker could fight LeRone Richards. He too has parted ways with Matchroom. It's an easy fight to make. Will Frank want to deal with LeRone Richards? LeRone left Frank as well. And LeRone is kind of becoming the forgotten man of British boxing. Somebody suggested to Zach Parker that he should fight LeRone Richards, and he said, I'll fight anybody. You see that Gongora victory for LeRone Richards? Right? It was supposed to advance his career, but what it's done inadvertently has put him in the Who Needs Him club. A lot of people said he was going to lose that fight. They're looking at that performance and they're saying, not putting my guy in with LeRone unless there's a belt and big money at stake. Not happening. This is what we were talking about with journeymen getting frozen out. If they exceed expectations like Kamil Sokolowski, who exceeds it with regularity, to suggest it's not a fluke. He can't get fights like that. You know what I mean? Like, he's getting frozen out the domestic scene. At least 2 or 3 of his last 4 fights have been abroad. That's the only place he's going to get work. And even at LeRone's level, he's a contender now. He's getting frozen out. And that Gongora performance didn't help. Now, people are going to say, oh, well, yeah, Beats, they're not going to fight him because he's boring. No, I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that. I think the boxing world saw how technically competent LERONE was in that fight. And the way they see it, he's not a big draw. Nobody's calling for their prospects or contenders to go in there with LERONE. So why are they going to take that fight? He hasn't got no belt to offer or anything. Nobody backing him. But I don't know, maybe Zach Parker should take the LERONE Richards fights because he's struggling to nail down opponents. He's calling out John Ryder. Andrade walked away from the Zach Parker fight. So what are his options? Sonny Edwards been doing a lot of talking, saying that he's going to slap up Julio Cesar Martinez in Mexico, although the fight looks likely to take place in London. They say it's nearly finalized. Sonny is working alongside Eddie, Pro Bellum, perhaps, and Martinez's people. Big talk, Sonny. Big talk. Big talk. Good unification fight. Usyk's going to come in there at 17 stone 8. Everyone's remarking how huge he looks. Now, boxing is a gamble. Sometimes you can just work to a game plan and you might not have to make no adjustments to the game plan and it works out for you. But sometimes you've got to walk in there blind and try different things. It's the nature of the beast. Is Joshua planning to come in the ring heavier in the rematch? Now, I'm not going to fully take Amir Khan's word because he believes that Joshua did his wife, right? And he doesn't like Joshua. Who would? If you really believe in your heart, that's what happened. Now, Joshua weighed 240 for the first fight. That's just over 17 stone. Usyk at 221 came in at 15.7. Now, what I was saying with going in there blind, Usyk has never fought that heavy in his whole career, 17 stone 8. And Usyk recently said the fight wasn't easy like everybody was saying. It was a tough fight. It was physically taxing. His face was marked up pretty bad. And he can't afford for Joshua to adjust his training, maybe come in heavier and be more aggressive this time around. He knows he might not get away with it. So is that why he's bulking up himself? A lot of Usyk fans and maybe people in his camp are assuming that that bulk isn't going to slow him down. They're assuming that the extra bulk is going to help him become a power puncher, when in effect it could take away speed and Joshua sees his shots and he's perhaps able to ride them better than he did last time. And this is what I've been saying in the months heading up to the rematch. Joshua, against a smaller, speedier guy, cannot expect not to get hit at all unless he KOs Usyk early, which is a distinct possibility with this more aggressive approach. But he must ride shots. He must take the sting out of the shots. He can't afford to be getting caught with flush shots too often. And I see Joshua throwing these body shots with Angel Fernandez, and whipping them in. And if he can catch Usyk on the hips, liver, lock up his body, he's all in. And he has to follow them shots up when he does land them. Can't stand back. But I also saw Usyk hitting a high bag, and it looked like he was aiming for the body as well. So have both men sensed that they both have weaknesses in that area? So it looks like Joshua is looking to knock Usyk out with this more aggressive, let's say Mexican style approach, with Robert Garcia training him for this one, alongside Angel Fernandez. And it looks like Usyk is looking for the knockout as well, with this extra bulk. Well, that should make for a great fight. I'm Team Joshua all day, but everybody wants to see a great fight, and that's what this one should be, according to what's leaking out of both camps. 9 days to go. I do intend to cover the whole card somehow. It might be difficult for me to do so, but I do intend to do so. See you on the next weekly.